Welcome to Channel Amic, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrating to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell on the side so once we have all the updates, be the first one getting all the insight. Now, today's video, we will follow up in regards to the migration review report that was announced in late April. And focus today specifically on the student visa. Now, obviously, there is a huge section within the report that a lot of people hasn't really been discussing about because it's not directly getting you a permanent resident or getting you a work that will perhaps impact to your employment, but student visa, perhaps it's the first step into Australia for many of you, or you becoming an international student, and there's gonna be some overhaul on the student visa program as well. Now, obviously, it's a huge asset for Australia. It's ranked the number 4 largest export industry, well, international students. Yes, it's the ranked number 4 for the entire Australia. So what does the government require and wish to do, or perhaps to make some changes? That will be what we're going to discuss today. And by the end of this video, I'll provide some of my thoughts and how and prediction where the Australian student visa will likely to go for. Now, first of all, I would like to point you back to the Graton Institute's proposal or their recommendation, because I think it has a vast effect on the policy changes. Obviously, that has a lot of direct and indirect effect to the migration review report. So this was actually, the recommendation was actually proposed late last year by the Graton Institute. So under the 2.10.2, this is what it says. Okay, it's exciting, but the way they gotta structure a new student visa and the pathway to permanent residency perhaps will have some major changes, and that's where you have seen the migration review report saying that they are likely to change the whole point test system as well. So let's have a look. It actually says offering a clearer pathway. Now, doesn't the system offers a clear pathway now? Not too sure, but let's continue to read, and I don't have the definite answer to what the government of Australia is gonna do for the student visa program. So a clear pathway to permanent residency would offer some big benefit to Australia, well, for sure, but for decades, international students arriving Australia, obviously they have been consulted, taking up some courses, and obviously they're aiming to perhaps migrate to Australia, but we gotta face the fact they are actually a lot cannot make it to the very end. So how would this new recommendation or policy to be implemented? Don't know. Let's have a little read of what it says. It says Australia remains a very attractive destination for migrants. However, making a clear pathway to a permanent residency will increase Australia's attractiveness compared to other comparable nations. Well, definitely. So there's a lack of clear pathway can disrupt career of temporary migrant. Now, obviously, that's a point where I wanted to direct you to see the actual migration review is talking about under the chapter 12. Let's go in there and have a look. Okay, it's a bulky documents where it consists of 195 pages, as you can see at the right on the top there, but it's quite small. But anyway, this is chapter 12 if you wanted to go into that document there, and I would like to go through this with you. So taking on the recommendation from Graton Institute, the report actually says, under this chapter, says Australia should focus providing all student, domestic, international, the highest quality education. Now, what does this actually saying? Does it mean that there are numbers of institutions doesn't provide quality education? Well, I think the answer is yes, because I've seen numbers of them. I can't say a lot. But how are they going to do this? So the education sector and regulator responsible for ensuring the education is the highest quality. However, the panel notes that migration system create incentive for non-genuine student and the profit-making education providers. Here we go. So what are they going to do with this? Obviously, I think the policy and regulation and the law that's coming up next will actually, looking in a way to get rid of these non-genuine and the profit-making educations. I don't know which one they are pointing the fingers at. So in the this is page 111. I wanted to jump to this part. Numbers of key things I wanted to discuss with you, which is coming to affect possibly changes. So now this is page 118. It says student English language requirement may not set student up to the success. So obviously, if we have a non-genuine student and profit-making solely education, obviously they will take the student in volume. Perhaps these courses are somewhat very cheap in compare, and also they genuinely pay by a lot of installments, so they allowed those international students to go out and work as a temporary workers out there, and that's actually the fact out there. So what does the government wanted to do with this one? So obviously they are looking in a way and checking with the system. They have found a lot of courses. I think what they are targeting at is mostly the vet courses, vet institutions, where the English requirement for those courses are comparatively low. Now, this obviously set to the failure and creating a huge number of the permanent temporary residents. That's right. They're trying to say they lure these international students into Australia, but they cannot meet the standard. They will never actually get into the point test system, and they will never actually migrate. And for the sake of the government thinking, they believe that this is basically wasting the resources, so they want to get rid of that. That's basically what this paragraph is trying to express. So they are aiming, let's have read on this one. There's an open question whether English proficiency requirement student graduate visa should be raised. Now that's so they're talking about IELTS self-view 5.5 as a sufficient bar for the least linguistically demanding courses, and rising to 7.5 for the linguistically demanding courses. So they are talking about, what we always recommend is for the international students to at least have a competent English, because that's where the mark is. Because it's going to be low. If it's going to be lower than that, you will really struggle after you graduate to actually get a certain good job. Okay, so I think this is fair what they're trying to say. So they are ranging from the IELTS ratio between 5.5 and 7.5, depend on the different courses. I'm pretty welcome on this statement there. Now the next one I wanted to show you is it's basically talking about the value selecting most likely benefit to the labor forces. So they are talking about some certainties and how they can select those so-called the good students to a permanent residency with a clear pathway. Now, obviously, talking about the advantage and things, but it doesn't tell us what the actual policy will be. So it really throws back the question to the government for the designing phase. Whether or not it's going to be a point test system, or perhaps what I have read here, perhaps thinking about the master by research or PhD students, they will be given a clear pathway to become a permanent resident rather than going through a traditional point test system. That probably will be a way to do it, or perhaps some student is highly ranked with highly skilled. Now, remember, from the very first video that I've been talking about in regards to this migration review report, there is a key phrase. There's a key phrase that the government of Australia is looking for, is the high human capital. Okay, this phrase is the wording that they wanted to attract those highly skilled migrants. So high human capital is also gonna rephrasing back and directly influence into the student visa that we are talking about today. So as you can see, from all these huge chapter 12 on this migration review report, they are all talking about the same thing, but it doesn't direct and doesn't provide what sort of mechanism or criteria it's gonna be. But anyway, let's move on to the next page or two. Is still talking about how the student, how they could utilize as an international student to transition them into permanent residency. The panel considered providing some student or graduate path guarantee pathway for permanent residency. Again, it doesn't give the criteria, but I will suspect it will be somewhat between probably the STEM related courses. Remember back a month ago, I've done a prediction on the upcoming hot courses. They are all basically on the engineering parts of STEM, ICT, and by research, PhD kind of student, they will be the first priority as what I believe how that's gonna be. Now, last but not least, the reform direction. Let's have a read here. Now, also there's a top here I also wanted to share with you. It says the tertiary institution attended top-ranking university. This is a poor indicator likely success of labor market. The evidence suggests that different institutions do well against different indicators. So again, there's no clear way how the program could actually assess, or there's an indicator to actually assess different institutions at this point in time. But I will say, from how I feel about it, the vet sector will be struck more badly from what I can see here, because if we're gonna relate everything back to high human capital as a phrase, comparing, I'm not saying graduate from vet courses it has less ranking than the higher educations, but in fact, if we relate back to that phrase is high human capital, obviously the higher educated graduates will obviously rank higher in that way. So a reform direction, there's a range of direction available for government to address. So again, there's no direct input here. First, improve student chances in our labor markets. How can they improve that? Obviously, they wanted to have higher English proficiency requirement for student to come in, and also perhaps a higher education level as well. This could expand, removing barriers, student building network, gain their work experiences. For example, revisiting the work out caps. It might also include increased English language, as I has mentioned. Second, there's an opportunity to focus a graduate visa to better support international students, demonstrate potential of our labor market. So the graduate visa might, for example, by automatically, again, this is the thing, I don't know how they're gonna do it automatically, because every courses, every program, every institution has different graduation date and program completion date. Some student may fail the last test and retake the test, so he or she will graduate different date compared to his classmates. So how can they monitor that? Perhaps it's gonna be a system like connecting university institution to the immigration to know when the student graduate. Have a total duration of time, how long it would take identify high potential graduate will succeed in permanent labor visa. So again, I don't know how the parameter will work. So graduate visa duration should within these parameters. There's no direct information there at this stage. Third, there will be an option of a very narrow set of circumstances provided a more certain direct to permanent residency pathway. So that's again that will be very welcome, but I believe that they will focus on the master by research and PhD student, but how they gonna do with the mix of indicator, I'm not too sure. But you can see here, for example, post-grad research. That's why I suspect as well. Fourth, the panel consider it's time for government to specifically review the student working hour cap. I think the cap is going to be raised to, again, that's already been done from 40 hours fortnight to 48 hours per fortnight. So that's already done there. Fifth, more work need to be done outside the migration system to support international student transition of work, access to legal remedies in response to exploitation and wages and blah blah blah. So that's again for fair work thingo. Last but not least, I think this will struck on a lot of the new upcoming international student. It says a more genuine move from genuine temporary entrance GTE criterion to a new genuine student test could reduce mixed messaging while maintaining the basic policy intent of a GTE. So what does that really mean? Now, it said the last sentence says maintaining the basic policy intended of the GTE. So that means the new genuine student test will generally be the same, maintaining what the GTE is currently at, but why are they changing it? So it could reduce the mixed messaging. I'm not too sure what that really meant, but I will say the GST, the genuine student test, is likely to be the same as GTE, but with the new policy on the student visa program, I believe. Now, to summarize this, I believe that the new student visa program will have increased part of the English language proficiency requirement. The current student visa requires the institution to test their student by means. You may have IELTS test or you may not. Okay, so I think they will like to enforce this through the visa provision. So all the international students wanted to come to Australia perhaps will require to demonstrate the level of English, and I think that will excluding those ones who wanted to take pure English language courses during the holiday or those school sectors. Okay, and secondly, I believe that a clear pathway for the PR on the students will be those master by research or PhD students, and the upcoming changes of the points test system would like to address of what we have mentioned, that high human capital thing, and the GTE or GST. I believe that will remain. So those are going to be the winners, and the losers will be perhaps those vet sector international student, because it will be really hard, because in compared to how they gonna reflect to that phrase of high human capital. I mean, the nation does require some mechanics, does require some chefs and things, but as in the high human capital, perhaps not as high as it will be. So that will be the only disadvantage part of this upcoming program. Anyway, should you have more question or query, more than welcome to leave comment right down below, and I'll see you next video. Goodbye.